What's it called?
Opus.
Opus.
Oh, yeah, we do Opus.
So Opus is an AI clip generator, and
Heard of it.
it'll grab, oh, I don't know, Chris, what, 7 or 8 2 to 3 minute clips.
Actually, it grabs a ton. It'll do like,
Oh, does it?
oh yeah, there's like probably 20 that it'll do, but it
Must only
does it by
select when it sends you
ratings.
the email. Yeah.
Correct.
So anyway, it'll send that, and then it gives you the ability to go back, take a look at them, edit it, see what you think about those clips, and then you can just send those out as reels.
Wow.
Yeah.
And
It's
Opus
Opus.
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 AI.
Uh-huh.
Hmm.
So
It's
it's an Opus
amazing.
clip generator, and so those are pretty cool. We'll send, when we have guests, we'll send them to you to approve, or for you to push toward your, we won't just do clips, without you approving it. But anyway, we'll send them to you. And if you want to push them out also on your, whatever platforms you use and whatever. So Chris is he's populating all the things right now. There are going to be people that are going to jump on. And one cool thing that we've realized, nobody wants to come on a podcast and get on and just have dead air. So we do a little chit chat, and we've gotten into some funny stuff over the course of what episode, what episode.
Easy.
I know, probably one of the funniest. And so we'll just get to talking, and then people will jump on and they'll send comments. And so it's kind of like a pre-show deal. So we do a little pre-show thing. But anyway, one of the funniest deals. Chris was talking one day, and he said something about Nipsey Russell. and it said, and I said something about, I commented because Tracy Russell had made a comment, and we have a copy of it. You ought to see it. We have a copy of, or a video clip of Chris saying something about he said, "Man, the craziest deal, you said Tracy Russell, and the first thing I thought of was Nipsey Russell." And I said, Nipsey Russell. I said, was he a Harlem Globetrotter? And my brother, he got tickled, and he lost it. And
it was over. It was done. It was absolutely over.
He said, I'm shook. And so anyway, we've had some moments. People say, I don't know about your podcast, but your pre-show is, man, you can't miss that part.
Have you ever had something like that trigger you at a funeral?
Oh man. I have not.
Oh, what? Man, it's the worst. It's the worst when something happens.
It is.
Because
laughing. how you going to get tickled? And at a funeral, there's nothing to be tickled about. And you can't play it off.
Well, it all depends on who's talking and who's singing.
That is
for
true.
Real.
That is so true.
We had another one where I told the story about the guy that was jet skiing, and he got killed because he got hit by a duck. It's a true story.
Oh my God.
And we got shook on that one. Hard to recover from that.
He got hit by a duck.
He got hit by a duck and it killed him.
So the duck was flying along, and they just somehow intersected at the wrong time and broke his neck and killed him. And I made the statement. I said, that what's so terrible is the last thing that he heard from his buddy was duck. and it was.
No way. No way. That is too good.
That's a true
people
story.
Were like, oh my God, you have no morals like to make a statement like that. I'm like, no, I wasn't trying to do that.
Well, and timing makes it difficult. Like you said, a funeral, like you get tickled, and the inappropriate time makes it horrible. And man, but we've made it through, Ken. We hadn't had to stop and start over on a recording.
Well, you get some people at a funeral that get their opportunity to sing. when when somebody, it's kind of like one of those things. There's some people that sing, and you're thinking somebody's got to tell them.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
For real.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, when
man.
the internal filter doesn't click on and say, this is probably not a good idea.
For real.
Man. Yeah, I was in Louisiana. I was a part of a funeral about 25, 30 miles away. Oh, I was not ready. I was sitting on the platform, and this guy cut loose. And,
No way.
and I'm telling you, and then what made it worse, I did the absolute worst thing. I cut my eye over and looked at Melanie.
Uh-oh.
And it was done.
Oh, and she was about to lose it. And so that just threw gas on it.
Oh no. Did anybody invite him? Did anybody invite him to sing, or did he just?
Oh yeah. Oh no, he was no. Somebody should have told multiple people.
There were many people that contributed to the folly. Isn't it interesting? Isn't it interesting? Like somebody's like, what I'd love to hear today is just brother Bobby's rendition of whatever. And
wrong, man. It's
down
so
on
wrong.
the bayou. I was doing a funeral at it was called House of Wheat. It was House of Wheat was the funeral home. And it's
House Wheat.
House of Wheat.
What?
It's fun.
Okay.
What?
So you pull up there and start laughing as you're walking
in. And every one of the funeral director has tuxes, and they're and they're hers. See, here you go. You say hers, you start laughing. It's like, this is not a word that you laugh on, but their hers had spinner hubcaps.
Oh yeah, nice.
And so anyway, so they had a person in the background because they had the schedule, and we all went into a room and they went through the schedule, and the person who was the time clock controller said, now you listen, I'm telling you right now, I will turn your microphone off and I will sit you down. Well, the one lady was feeling it, and she figured if it was the Lord, nobody was going to shut her down. So she went out in front, and she got the people to join her, and whatever. And so when she got done, the person took the microphone and said, thank you. We'll have none of that from the rest of you. It was the funniest, craziest.
Oh my word.
Oh my
That's
goodness.
awesome. That is awesome. Well, as Ken Bistarkey, we also have, Brother Shock, we also have our own meteorologist for the Mobilized Church Network, Ken Bistarkey. So he lets us know today that it's sunny 60 degrees, high of 72 in Northeast Ohio today, which is an amazing thing. So he also added that you can't spell funeral without the letters fun. So
that's true.
Throwing that out there.
Strangely, my chat isn't coming up, so I don't know what the deal is there.
That funeral home you were talking about, a great logo for them on the side of the hearse would have been like that bundle of wheat. And then it could have been sheaves for Christ.
Exactly.
For real.
Only if they were saved.
Right. Right.
Because
but I mean,
it's true.
Really? But now, I mean, all you have to do is die to be saved, right?
That's true.
My God.
He's in a better place.
God.
I got, speaking of funerals and weddings, I'll tell you something real crazy here before we go to 3, 2, 1. I got somehow I got a mental mix up between the words funeral and wedding. And so in premarital counseling, a couple of times I'd stumbled on the word funeral, and I said, "I'm sorry, guys. I know this. I believe this is the will of God. I don't. This is not the Lord speaking here or whatever." And so in my head, I kept saying to myself, Dillingham, do not say funeral today.
That's a done deal.
And I did.
It's a done deal.
There's nothing that you are going to say it. And I said, I welcomed everyone and said, we're so thankful to have everyone at the funeral here today. there was a moment where people, it was sort of a little bit of a quiet gasp. It was a little bit of like, oh no. And then the humor of it hit. And I said, folks, I told myself 100 times I wasn't going to say it. And that's probably why I said it. So
that's awesome. That's awesome. All right, gentlemen, we ready to go? I think we're all shared out. I think we got it on all the platforms. We're good to go. No crazy bots on YouTube yet. So that's a good thing.
I'm going to trust you on the comments, Chris.
Yeah, I got you.
I have none of them.
Okay. All right. I got you covered. All right. Here we go. We'll go 3, 2, 1, and we'll go live. 3, 2, 1. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Mobilized Church Podcast. This is Chris Dillingham alongside my big brother, Ken Dillingham Jr. the third on this beautiful Tuesday today. It's a beautiful day, Ken. And once again, we have third man in the booth.
Listen, not only do it always, have you figured this out that it makes us better?
Oh, no doubt. Well, today there's no chance that there's no way to make it anything less than excellent because we have the man, the myth, the legend, Brother Terry Schock with us today. We're excited about this. This is going to be an awesome day, isn't it?
It is absolutely.
Brother Schock, we're glad to have you with us, man. So glad to have you join us today. And we promise to do our best we'll be on our best behavior. We'll try anyway to do that. But we want to start today and just introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about what you got going on and about your ministry and just a little bit about you and your family.
Well, thanks, man, for allowing me on. It's quite a privilege to be on with the dynamic duo of the Dillinghams. And I'm very happy to be in the third box, third booth, third picture, bottom picture, whatever. It's just good to be. It's just good to be with you guys. Melanie and I are leading Kingdom Quest Ministries, and it's been quite a journey. We started it in 2007, I believe. 2007 was when we established the 501c3 of Kingdom Quest. And so, a lot has happened since then. When we, when I'm thinking or, talking about how it all happened, if that's the question, we were both raised by kingdom-minded families that were very involved in church. Both of us were raised in church. We didn't meet each other for many years, but she was called to the ministry at 14. I was called at 16.
Wow.
We didn't meet each other until our mid-20s, and then we got married. And wow, I mean, it was this way, it was that way. It was youth ministry. She was involved in music and teaching, and I was teaching and preaching and youth assistant, associate, all those things. And,
That's awesome.
And it took a turn. It took a turn to equipping, training with a lot of missions. And so here we are today.
That's amazing. You're on your website, it says that your passion is to equip leaders seeking to advance the kingdom, whether in group settings or one-on-one with senior pastor couples. They focus on leadership training and development. In addition to conducting workshops and training events, you create resources, many of which can be found on your website, which is kqministries.net. We'll put that in the show notes, and also we'll mention that to at the end of the show so that you can go there. But that's kqministries.net. So we're obviously, like my brother said, we're excited to have you on the show. Tell us a little bit. Let's just jump in here and tell us a little bit about not just your ministry journey. And I know you've just mentioned that, but how has that led you to the work that you're currently engaged in? What, how did your pathway that you just mentioned sort of, arrive you? I mean, obviously I know the Lord, right? That's the number one answer, but how has it brought you to this place where, you're currently engaged?
Well, there was I had three men that were, if I was going to say, the top three men in my life, and I've been very blessed with many. But my father and Brother Lumpkin Sr. and then Bill Patrick. He, whenever I was in the 11th grade in Fort Smith, Arkansas, my dad and Brother Lumpkin and some of the people there started a Christian school. And so my 11th grade, I went from public school to Christian school, and they hired a Christian, not a high school principal from Arkansas, another area. He was a part of another denomination and had seen, baptism in Jesus' name and one God, and so he came, and I didn't even, I mean, I was just introduced to him, never knew him. The day that man walked into my life was the day everything changed.
Wow.
The first time, of course, my dad and Brother Lumpkin, I was raised, my first memories of church involvement was 4 and 5 years old, riding on top of the buffer on Sunday afternoons as my dad cleaned the church. So,
Riding, wait,
awesome.
that's what a great riding on top of the buffer. If you're
riding
going to
on
have
the buffer, I didn't last long. I mean, it was kind of a. He was good at it. I mean, he could actually give us a good ride. But
all we had was the sit and spin when we were little.
That's what I was thinking. That's like
when we were little, we had the sit and spin.
Well, but you guys are so young. I mean, we're talking decades difference here.
Oh yes, exactly. But, what's funny is here's the first. I mean, this is the first takeaway of many today is if you're going to involve your kids and get them involved, bring them in the menial chores and make it fun.
Absolutely. And so then I tell people that my first assigned ministry responsibility at a church, I was 7 years old and Dad gave me one hallway to keep clean.
Wow.
Interesting.
So then by the time I was 15, I mean, I had keys to the church. I was the church janitor.
That's awesome.
So then in comes Brother Patrick. And he took me on a driving trip from Fort Smith, Arkansas to below Mexico City on a mission trip. I think I was 21 at that time. My dad had passed away whenever I was 19. And he took us on, me and his son, Ronnie, and Donnie, his brother, and a doctor and his son. And anyway, it was just a small group of us, and we stayed in slept in a rest area. Heard a commotion, 2:00 in the morning, sirens and all. Well, on the other side of the rest area, 2 people had been murdered.
Oh my.
That was where I saw, they'll have buses in those countries with just people just literally hanging on them. And one of those had been hit by a train. And so my world view,
goodness gracious,
was absolutely turned upside down on that one trip. We drove by and saw families living, just under brush, and he got us out, and we got under the brush with them, and we saw them eating rats, and so that was where my world vision changed, right there. And so I started thinking beyond the bounds of the United States border. Then being a part of POA for all those years with the missions focus that church has had for decades, and then all the traveling that we did with doing at least one because of the times overseas for years. It just grew and grew until 7 years before God changed our direction and we left POA. I became co-chair of Leadership Development International with Brother Brought in the Philippines. And so then that's what led. Then whenever I resigned at POA at about that time, Brother Brought's health had crashed, and so they asked us to lead it. And that's where the mission side came. As far as the focus on leadership, when I was youth pastor at POA, I was teaching the junior high kids leadership. It was just always something that got my attention, that if we can organize and if we can get people going the right direction, then we can accomplish more. I guess that came. I know that came from my dad, Brother Lumpkin, and Brother Patrick.
That's interesting, because like youth ministry, a lot of times is if you're not careful, you can teach them how to be followers quick. Everything's done for them. Everything's done,
Right.
which is cool. I mean, like, we need to have fun, and it's not, but
Absolutely.
that's all great stuff. And it's not to say that, by the way, it's not to say that leadership training isn't fun. It's just that it's sort of a different focus, isn't it?
Well, it is. And here's what I think we get wrong about leadership. When we start talking leadership, we immediately go positional.
Mm-hmm.
Great point.
When leadership is affecting thinking and action. Well, you could go. You men have schools, don't you? Do you have daycares?
We do.
You could stand and just watch the kids in a daycare. You could pick out the leader.
So true.
For sure.
You could pick out. I mean, there's everybody. If you're married, there is the influencing thought and action, back and forth, back and forth. That's leadership. So what happens is we get so focused on positional leadership that we leave so much on the table.
Man, that's so good. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that it's kind of a misguided view of positional leadership? And how do we so one of the things that is mentioned on your website talks about coming alongside, helping people discover their life's purpose and all of that. So with that, like, how are you identifying those leaders? How are you help pulling that out? Obviously you had a life experience where that happened in your life. Somebody helped pull that out of you. So how do we get people to change the view and perspective that leadership is positional, right? We know that's the lowest form of leadership. And what are you doing to help extract out those skills and abilities that are naturally recognizable?
Well, I think until someone feels valued, we're never going to see their just the areas that they are valued.
Terry, let me ask you just real quick. I know I don't want to stop your stream.
No, that's okay.
Would you say that the responsibility that you were given when you were 7 and then by 15, was there an element of feeling valued in that? I mean, did you, because I know probably Brother Patrick or Dan, not Dan Patrick, for crying out loud.
Bill Patrick.
Bill Patrick.
Dan Patrick taught you about sports. Bill, see, there he goes.
That's so amazing. He's in fuego. You can't stop him, only hope to contain him. That's Dan Patrick. Exactly. That's a totally different deal.
Which is Terry Shock. He's in fuego. But Bill Patrick, like, I mean, obviously, like, he probably made you feel, you said make him feel valued, right?
Well, I was so blessed to have people in my life, my parents leading the way, who saw value in me that I did not see.
Wow.
Yeah.
What a lot. See, okay, I was always overweight. Always overweight. I have 3 brothers. You know, they were all blessed with good genes, and then of course now they're struggling, and I'm laughing. But that's another that's another that's another side to it.
Yeah.
But not only was I overweight and got called fatso, you know, in
Hmm.
school and all that, I stuttered so bad that I had to go to a special speech teacher.
Really?
And so and her name was Miss Earl. Now, Miss Earl, if you know, God rest her soul, she would have never believed that I would be doing what I'm doing today.
Wow.
That's
Absolutely
amazing.
no way. And I stuttered so bad that there would be days that mother would say that I wouldn't even that I just wouldn't talk.
Oh my
Well,
goodness.
you don't want to talk
Hmm.
when people make fun of you.
Sure.
And so then when you try to talk and you can't get words out, and then those sounds come out, and then other people start making those sounds, making fun of you. You know,
That's
I mean,
tough.
it can just make you not even want to talk. I fought that. I remember one day, whenever I was youth pastor at POA, people who stutter, people who have speech problems, a lot of times struggle speaking into electronics, telephones,
Oh.
ordering, like ordering fast
Yeah.
food.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Like that
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
So I pull up to Burger King one day. I was youth pastor POA, just swinging in to get something to eat, and I looked at that thing and could not talk.
Huh.
Interesting.
Could not
Wow.
talk, and I just had to drive through and wave at him and leave. I could not talk.
Huh.
Well, so you have those struggles, but then to have people at a young age that look past those physical struggles
Yeah.
Hmm.
and add value, you know, to you. Well, you don't ever forget that.
Golly,
And
that's amazing.
that's where it starts, because we don't look deep enough. And then, you know, and then people act in a manner that it's so easy for us to just shut them down.
Yeah.
Move them out of the
Yeah.
way. They're bad. Well, what's going on in their world? So, wow, we could spend the whole session on that, because that's a big topic. But
Yeah.
you've got to add value to people. You've got to look for it. You've got to go for God wiring and get out of all this crazy rewiring. We've got to look past group think and go to individual think.
Hmm.
How did God wire that individual? It's not about me rewiring them so they can do better what will help what I want done.
Oh my.
It's working with God in how did he wire them for the kingdom, and then placing, because if we can match passion and wiring, we won't have to drive ourselves crazy motivating people.
Holy cow. All right, Terry, look.
So good. That's so good.
I'm about to jump out of my chair, because one of the things that we talk about, we spend a lot of time talking about this, and I don't want to, Chris, help me not to derail this, because I mean this gets this, but it's so, this is so prevalent, and particularly in the church. You know, one of the things that we talk about is that sort of one primary missional methodology of the church in North America has been sort of the attractional model. Let's do church so amazingly that we get more people coming, keep them coming, and make them members, which then means we need certain people doing certain things to make that, and I don't want to use the word machine in a pejorative or a derogatory way, but to make the machine more impressive. And so we say, well, you know, we need you to push this button, pull this lever, grease this cog, you know, whatever. And we try to make people passionate about the thing that, anyway. And what I just heard you say is that there is some way that God has wired people. And because of that, if we could find that, there is a way. I'm trying to see if I'm tracking with you here.
Oh, you are.
there is a way that expression then will be sort of like a self-perpetuating machine because it's what God made them to be and it's what God made them to do. Am I tracking with you?
No, you absolutely are. Hey, and I don't want to derail this thing either, but can you imagine what could happen if we could think kingdom instead of filling up a building?
My goodness.
And so if we're thinking kingdom and we're realizing that the kingdom is within you, so wherever you go, the kingdom is within you. And if we could kick the walls down to the church, meaning that if you've got somebody in your church that is on the city council, that is involved at the Rotary Club, if they understand that they are a kingdom ambassador, then why aren't we equaling that with a youth staff member or a praise singer or whatever? Why? Because the kingdom includes medical, educational, business, blue collar, white collar. The kingdom is
With
massive.
Men. Kingdom is with men.
And so we are locked into this attractional thing in a little building once a week.
Jesus. Chris, I've never taken a lap during a podcast.
He's about to do it right now. That's so awesome. No, it's so true. So how do we go about, what are some things that you're doing to I think identify that? Because again, that model, the attractional model leans towards those that have the right personality, right? The charisma or certain things that are just very prevalent. Not that God can't use that. I'm not saying that we shouldn't, but there are a lot of giftings and abilities. Like you're talking about somebody with leadership skills that are able to get engaged in community politics or whatever. So,
that like Terry Shock may not be obviously recognizable on the surface. The thing that God wants.
That's right. That's what I'm saying. Those things that are not so visible and so apparent. What are some things that you're doing to help identify those things and help us as leaders to look and to identify those places that people have potential? I remember years ago, my son was probably 8, and he sat down and started playing the piano. Never had any lessons or anything. Just sat down and started playing the piano, and he was like for real playing. He wasn't just tinkering around. And I was like, okay, something's going on there. And my sister-in-law sat down and showed him a couple chords, and within 10 minutes, he was playing the piano. And so I told my wife, I said, let's get that boy in piano lessons right now, because he has natural talent. He has natural ability. Today, he's a gifted musician, whatever. So like our job is to identify places. He didn't know that. He didn't know that was in him. So how can we help leaders to see and identify things that may not be visible, really apparent, but how can we identify those, and what can we do to help pull those out of people that they may not even know that it's there?
I think just some very basic things. Some conversations, some one-on-one conversations, and listen, and just listening. Okay, for instance, things in that area. Now, obviously, it's totally different. You got a little child or whatever. What Brother Patrick was so good at was he gave young people experiences. Experiences is the big one, because it's throwing out a wide net and seeing, okay, who's going to respond to what. But can you imagine what could happen if there was a system, and I'm working on this system now, that people could sit down with somebody and ask some questions, not invasive, not too deep, not therapy, but could find out what were the life markers, what were the big things that happened in their life, and then go to the present. Okay, where they are, what interests them, what skills do they have, and then go to their dreams. what are your dreams?
Sure.
What do you think one day? What in the kingdom? What do you think? What do you lean toward? What's your natural? Can you imagine how we could set people free in matching wiring? And I know there's tests and gifts tests and all that, and I'm for all of that. But I'm just talking about having a basic understanding of a God wired, God created individual to understand their past, their present, and their dreams for their future, and place them to where they could have experience, and then have a way of tagging in. How's this going? Do you feel do you feel the fire in this? Do you feel the passion in this? If there's not that inner drive, then don't keep them locked into something that,
because it's going to suck the fuel out of them, isn't it? It's going to suck the life. You know what's interesting as you're talking about this? It's interesting because one great mentor in my life one time told me, he said, "Ken, remember that exposure breeds appetite."
that's right.
And what you're talking about is
That's
that
it.
the experience creates exposure. And so it acquaints people to at least help them see how God has wired them. Because when you went to Mexico, right, you looked, it's weird. You saw like people get murdered. You saw somebody get hit by a train. You saw people eating rats. And while, we might think, oh, well, we want to show them the fun stuff, or but there was a deep call to deep. Like, it feels to me, at least, like there was something inside of you. And while we were talking, this is so hard to do on a podcast, but what I felt the Spirit speak to me as you were talking was, this is exactly what I was talking about the equipping of the saints. That what I'm asking you to do is to help them uncover how I've wired them, so that you can put them back in my hands. I'm not giving them to you for you to use for your goals and to increase your scorecard. I'm asking you to help unravel some things and pull some things out of them, so that when you say, "Okay, now, Lord, use them like you planned."
Yeah, the church, and wow, I want to be careful how I say this, because I love the church, but we got to get out of rewiring.
Yeah.
And we've got to focus on God wiring. How did God wire people? Melanie teaches on this some, and her view of it is, she reads that story about the rabbit on the swim team. And it's, you got all these animals, and the rabbit did great in running, but horrible in swimming, and the eagle was great in flying, but being forced to climb the tree messed up its ability to fly, and on and on and on and on. And it's that basic thing of finding out how God wired people.
My goodness. So moving into all right, so let's move into ministry framework, because I think this is something important, because if something's going to be reproducible, we have to be able to demonstrate the principles, which you've done a marvelous job at so far. And I'm sure we've scratched the surface, right? But you have to be able to clearly articulate the principles, and then you have to be able to give people practices that follow after the principles. And it's not a program. It cannot be programmatic, because programs, right? Chris, your favorite statement from Drucker, right?
Yeah.
That culture eats programs for breakfast. And
Right,
so,
right.
so obviously, I know you're not trying to create programs. You're trying to create a culture. And so principles that have practices that follow principles can create culture. So let's talk a little bit about your Kingdom Quest ministry framework. And I think we've heard, what the mission is that Jesus has charged you and Melanie with. But if you want to, hit that, what motivates you, what wakes you up every day. But I think more specifically, how have you, or obviously clearly the Lord through you, how's he wired you to craft a ministry framework that helps meet these goals?
Well, what we're seeking to do is to equip kingdom leaders. That's what we're seeking to do. We have, we connect. Obviously, we do different Zoom teachings, and it has led us. I think one of the major things that we have focused on now is what we call pastoral intensives. That is, it's only open for senior pastor couples. One of the hard things about what we're doing is narrowing down our scope, to where we think that the needle can be moved. The reason why we're focusing so much on senior pastor couples is because it's the senior pastor who ultimately decides what's going to be preached, what's not going to be preached. Are we going to be a fivefold church? Are we not going to be a fivefold church? Are we going to let the gifts of the Spirit move? We're going to shove them to another room, or are we going to put a 30-minute clock on the I mean, it's the senior pastor. We're going to give to missions. We're not going to give to missions. Who's going to come in? Who's not going to come in?
Right.
And so we focus there, and we've started pastoral intensives. And what that is, speaking of just that piece of the framework, they will fill out an 8-page assessment, and then they'll come here to Brazil, Indiana, and we spend 2 days with them. And it's been, and we deal with a series of set kingdom paradigms.
Wow.
That we feel is important for everyone. They end up leaving with a personalized roadmap that nobody sees the assessment except Melanie and I. Nobody sees their roadmap except the 4. That's it. And in those,
so you take some universal core principles.
Yeah, so I was gonna say core principles. It's not a one size fits all program.
No.
So if I'm hearing you right, because I think this right here, this is the thing, and I just wanted to emphasize that because, one of the things, my brother and I, we do a really a different form of coaching, but some similarities in the sense that you have to. There's so many people out there. There's so many pastors that don't feel like anyone's really made any kind of a real investment into their life. And so so you're saying that you take some universal core principles, but then you drill down and say, now here's your specific personalized roadmap.
Oh, absolutely. Because that's the last 2 hours of the second day. We spend in 2 days, we'll spend about 14 hours in one-on-one connection, couple to couple. And we're going to start, we spend a lot of time hearing them to pinpoint. I mean, how do you know where you're going to go if you don't know where you are?
Sure, absolutely.
But then the last 2 hours of it is where everything just really comes together, and they walk out with, as an individual, sir, you need to work on da da da. As an individual, ma'am, da da da. As a couple, da da da. As leading the church, this, and then we have, and then there's opportunity for follow-up Zooms, and then the second phase of that would be where it's called visioneering, where Melanie and I go to their church and spend 3 days with them and their upper pastoral leadership team, for people who come. But what we're dealing, and we just completed our 21st couple. So the reason why I get so passionate is because I have had a major burden for senior pastor couples forever. Now I know why I do.
Wow.
Now, after literally days now in these one-on-one conversations, digging down deep, not going general, now I see why. And so when you start drilling down on, okay, the kingdom is greater than religion.
Yeah.
Kingdom is greater than religion. Another key one that we deal with, and Melanie mainly drives this one, is purpose is greater than role. That's huge. More, I think, more, a lot. Let's just say a lot of lights come on for the man and the woman in that. And I'm very excited. Melanie just last week finished her first draft of her new book. Purpose is greater than role. This is going to be. This one's a big one. I mean, that is absolutely huge. There's just some of those key concepts, and of course, missional is greater than attractional. Apostolic culture is greater than church growth.
So good.
So when you dig, home is greater than the local church. Wow. Now we dig into this, and man, we've had some pastors push back.
Interesting.
That's fine. Push.
That's good. That's good. Because do you feel like they push back because of the fact that there are some paradigms that have been embraced? There are some, there may be senior pastors that have gotten their identity from their role, and nobody's
helped. That is the issue. and Ken, here's the deal. I had the role of a pastor, youth assistant associate for 30 years. Guess what? That role ended.
Yeah. Now what?
Chances are our wives are going to be left without us one day. I mean, It may not be. Melanie may die before me, but the trend is
statistically,
okay. So these women, their husbands die. These pastors' wives.
Yeah. So true.
Okay.
That's so good.
It's a tank. They tank. Well, why? Because everything was focused on that role. There are a lot of couples when it comes to empty nest. They go nuts.
Sure, bro. Sure.
Okay. Why? Because they're focused on role. This is my role. Why are a lot of transitions blowing up in churches?
Bro.
I was just getting ready to say that.
On role.
Yeah. Their whole value is created by the position, right? That's where their value comes from. So now you extract away the role, and now they have no value in the kingdom. That's the feeling.
I'm going to use this example only. The only reason why I'm calling his name is because he told the story and put it in his book. Okay, I'm listed in his book. Brother Hanscom, known in our organization.
Yeah.
And I'll take a big story and make it little. I was teaching in Canada. We were teaching in Canada 5 years ago, I guess, probably 5. They were transitioning and moving, and I could tell, man, he was having, he was having he was just having a struggle with it. I could tell. So I usually don't talk to elders, and if I'm not real close to them, I don't talk to them this hard. But man, I just felt the witness of the Spirit, and I was like, Brother Hanscom, you're thinking retirement. There is no retirement in the kingdom of God.
Wow.
It's reposition. This is not the United States Social Security system. The number 65 was not sent down from the council in Acts 15. Get 65 out of your head. So we start talking about all of that, and the conversation went good, and so a year or so later, year and a half later, whatever, I'm walking through the booths at General Conference, and he's sitting at a table and yells at me and holds up a new book he had written. And what he had done, he had realized, this is not retire. This is reposition. And he wrote a book about all the miracles that he had seen. And he told me at that time, he said, I have 34 miracle services booked right now.
Wow.
Well, okay. Okay. Why? Because he got past thinking role and got into his purpose.
Man. Isn't it interesting too that, in some ways, um, I say interesting, ironic, maybe even sad that sometimes people don't discover that. I mean, that story shows us and demonstrates that sometimes people don't demonstrate that, I mean, that people don't understand that until role is either removed or impending the removal of that role, that you
Mm-hmm.
begin to feel purposeless. And then you begin to think, wow, I've been defined by role. The amazing thing about it is, you were talking about, I've been assistant or youth assistant, associate, and all of those things. When that ended, what's amazing is purpose didn't. In fact, maybe in some ways, purpose actually flourished, you know? And so, I mean, because purpose isn't, I mean, if you're serving in a role, it's only because God's purposed you to do that, right?
Yeah. I mean, well, we
Yeah,
hope.
yeah, yeah. I'm speaking. I'm speaking in the optimum.
Right. One area of this, while we're on this, that, man, the apostolic women, especially those in leadership, boy, they've got to have this. Melanie's got a great passion for this, and that's the reason why she started nonfiction. Nonfiction is a retreat every year for women in ministry. This year, she is doing the event, and that's May 31st and June 1st for all women, just all women, all denominations, all women from like 12 years old and up. Well, where this passion is coming from, she started nonfiction back whenever she was ladies president in Louisiana. And it started because of this passion to help women in ministry get a grip on them and their wiring and their gifting. And the great thing about it, when she first started it, the name of it was Nonfiction. You can't make this stuff up. and it was for women in leadership. Well, and so now that's happening. This purpose over role, it's a big one.
It's huge. And you're talking about like transition. I see that, my experience here has been so amazing with Brother Jordan in that transition, because, he wasn't defined by what that position is, and continues to be effective in the kingdom and do things that,
That's it.
now adds great value. Like imagine the value that we would miss if we didn't have voices like a Brother Jordan, who has all the experience and the things that he's seen and the wisdom and all of that. I have been the recipient of changed role. Now he doesn't have the pressure of pastoring and leading the church or whatever, but his voice and his influence have been so critical, so important. So, man, I appreciate that. That's a great conversation. I think it's one we really, really need to have. So, not kind of transition just a little bit. So you've had these pastors, you've had these conversations. What are some things that you're seeing happen in the kingdom where you feel like God is leading us? Obviously, that's one place with transitioning from position to roles. What are some things you're seeing that you really feel like God is doing? God is moving the church. The conversation, obviously, the conversation about from attractional to movement, instead of gathering to sending, discipleship, like all of these are becoming pervasive terms in our culture. What are some things that you're seeing in this experience?
So I can really speak candid here, right?
It's just us three. It's just us three here today.
Yeah, right, okay.
Actually, Facebook is down, so it literally is probably just us three right now. So,
okay. In the day that we're in, let me mention first what I think is on the horizon.
Yes.
And what the Spirit is saying. What is on the horizon? I feel like chaos like we haven't seen. It would take a sovereign move of God in this country and in this world to stop the train that has picked up so much speed that is racing through our world and nation. And then with this, I'm not a doomsday guy, but good grief, I'm not blind.
Sure.
So I feel that is definitely happening.
By the way, Terry, the Lord is in the background as you were talking. The loudest lightning and thunder in the background just went. Did you guys hear it? Did you hear it on the microphone?
I didn't hear it.
The Lord is adding sound effects to your statement. So I'm just saying.
Well, we will take that as a confirmation. And if the whole thing shuts down, we will take it as a confirmation that he wanted me to shut up. We'll have to play that one both ways. So on the horizon, that's what I see. There, at the same time, I see a great revival. Yes, but it's going to have to get dark. The lights. People are not going to turn to God when everything's going right.
Yeah, it's true.
There's going to have to be a shaking to even shake the church awake. What do I feel that the Spirit is saying for us to do right now? I feel that the Spirit is saying that we have to equip and train for a day that we may not have our buildings or the internet.
My goodness.
We've got to start thinking that way. Now, here's the reason why I'm saying that. Now, I hope we have our buildings in the internet until the rapture. That's great. But what if we don't?
Right.
So we as a church, we've got to start using our buildings, using the internet to equip and train for a day that we may not have them. We've got to start focusing on what matters, that does not need electricity, that does not need internet, does not need lights, does not need production, does not need performance. We've got to zero in on that. Well, what's that going to be? We've got to train men.
So good.
We've got to train men to be able to lead their homes. We've got to have a network with our church, network together to where if we get shut down again, we're ready. Yeah. We've got to use all of this wonderful technology that we have to train and equip for a day that we may not have it.
That's so interesting.
We've got to think Acts 2:42 through 47. Because you go to that list, you get down to the end of that list, and here's what you get. And the Lord added to the church. Now, I'm not just taking a gun and shooting everything else, but if there was a list given and at the bottom of it, it said, and the Lord added.
Yeah.
I would just think that we would be smart to make sure we're not running off of a list that gets us what we can add. And go to the list that clearly says they did this and the Lord added.
You know what's amazing? What's amazing about that is I think when we Chris and I talk about this a lot, that people ask the question. I'm not going to share some of the names because some of the people, God has opened some doors and give us some access to some people that, I mean, I'll tell you off, we'll talk a little bit off camera, but
sure.
But it's some people that they've written books and they're known widely in some not say the denominational realm, but wider Christian circles.
Yeah.
And one of the things that was sort of discovered through the kind of like 2010 through 2020 was something that we talk about a lot, is the fact that the church growth movement, the church growth gurus, emerged from 1970 to 2000 as they watched how mega churches were growing and how that other churches then can begin to implement some of those principles so that they too can have a megachurch. Well, somewhere in the mid 2000s, you can read some of the stuff in Ed Stetzer's book, Lost and Found. Tom Rayner has some information on this through Lifeway Research Group. But that what they found was that only 1 out of 10 of that growth of every megachurch that emerged in a megachurch status, and there was a doubling of megachurches every decade from 1970 to 2000, but there was only 1 out of 10 that came from baptisms. And there was an average of 13 churches that closed in a 30-mile radius of every megachurch that emerged during those 4 decades. And what they came to the conclusion was that we've been trying to teach pastors and churches how to replicate an irreproducible and unscalable model that basically not only isn't reproducible and not scalable, but it wasn't actually doing the mission of bringing lost people into the church, even in the widest scope of what being born again would mean.
It's not even biblical.
Yeah.
There are so many churches that the way that they're operating, it's not even biblical.
Right.
I guess I'm astounded. I'm astounded at how much I hear that is not straight from book, chapter, verse in the Bible.
Yeah.
Whenever it comes to leadership, developing people, and all of these kinds of things. I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I listen to some people even in our ranks, and I think, the Bible would really help you.
Yeah.
There's some good stuff in that Bible, and we're never going to be apologetically strong.
Yeah.
It's let the word do the heavy lifting. Do you want to talk leadership? Then Jesus Christ is the ultimate leader, period.
Absolutely.
And then if you need another good one in the Bible, I would recommend going to Moses, then Joshua, then Paul. You take those 4 men in leadership and dissect that, you got it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So good.
Man.
So I know the mission has been a big part of, your ministry. POA's led the way, the passion for reaching the lost and whatever. What are some things that we need to do to get the rank and file? One of the things we've talked about here is the term ministry. All of us, our primary calling, every born again, spirit-filled believer, our primary calling is to make disciples. We're all called to that ministry. So what are some things that we can do to mobilize people to get engaged and get involved in the mission? There's some things I think that have hindered that over the years. People feel like they're inadequate, or they don't have the ability, or it's all, it's personality driven. It's the wild, crazy evangelist guy that goes out and does crazy stuff. But like, what are some things that you're doing to help move people to fulfill the most fulfilling thing that we can do in the kingdom, which is reaching people with the gospel?
When we moved here, and it was just a God thing, the way we ended up in little Brazil, Indiana, we love it, 8,200 people. It's about 12 miles from Terre Haute, where we attend church with the Harpoles. We made a conscious decision, Melanie and I did, because we're gone a lot. But we made a conscious decision that we were going to spend more time, our free time, we were going to spend time with unchurched people.
Man, I love that.
That we were going to make friends. We were going to be in their house. They were going to be in ours. We was going to go out to eat with them. There's a list of people. There's a list of pastors around here. There's a list of leaders in the church. Great people that really I'd love to be around more. But we had to make a conscious decision that we were going to spend time with people. I have, I keep a list of every conversation that I have with somebody that goes below the surface. If it's just a tag in conversation, then I don't put it down. But I focus on keeping a record of below the surface conversations. My personal focus is the king, the kingdom, kingdom entry, and kingdom life.
So good.
When I'm on airplanes with people, you just as soon as they say, "Well, what do you do?" As soon as they even sniff out that I'm a preacher, minister, whatever, the shade just comes down. And so as soon as I can look at them and say, I was raised Pentecostal, I am Pentecostal, I thank God for it, but I'm done with religion.
So
I don't
good.
do religion anymore. I do kingdom.
And boy, doesn't that open up that just opens up the whole thing, doesn't it?
I was on the airplane with one man that was a neighbor of Tiger Woods when he got beat up by his wife. So I mean, to live in that neighborhood, obviously, you know what level.
Got a few dollars.
And we were talking and had a good conversation, and he asked me, I found out, what all he did and what all he owned. And then he asked me what I did, and I told him, and he just kind of was, going to end that. And I said, but I don't do religion anymore. I do kingdom. I said, because religion's just fight. And he said, oh, tell me a little bit more about that.
And he brought the laser shield down.
Yep. But then he took it back up when I said, I don't do religion. They just fight. And I started talking to him about King Jesus and the kingdom and his kingdom, and that the way you get in it is by water and spirit baptism.
Yeah.
And then you live that kingdom life, and the principles of that life is life change. Well, that's the conversations that I'm having. And I am just absolutely amazed at how far the conversations are going and where they're leading and what's going on. I think we've just got to get intentional and not, when I say not make everybody a project, don't take me wrong, because my brother started a church in Conway, Arkansas. And so I was talking with him, and I know this might be a little bit controversial, but hear me out a second. So I was talking with him about reaching people, and I was talking to him about winning them, building the relationship and winning them to us first. And when I said that, he said, that's not biblical. You can't prove that biblically. And I said, what? He said, Terry, you can't prove. You can't prove. You've got to win somebody to you first before you introduce them to Jesus. You can't prove that. He said, go and preach the gospel. Now there's times when, yes, there is that connection. Then there's times we've heard stories that God said to somebody, go knock on that door, and they were saved. My brother, my oldest brother, was out knocking doors last week, and it was amazing what has already happened with a couple. So in our reach for people, it's not just, well, I got to get them in a 12-week Bible study right now. There could be several conversations before that.
Exactly.
It could be that there is a relationship that has to be built based on that person, but we can't do a one size fits all.
Mm-hmm.
It's got to be a spirit directed thing, and we've just got to be open to the Spirit. But we've got to step into the uncomfortable zone and go with the nudges.
So true.
Yeah.
One of the statements that goes along with what you're saying here, I think, is Francis Schaeffer is quoted to have said, if I only have 60 minutes to spend with someone, I'm going to spend 55 minutes asking them questions and getting to know them, so that in the last 5 minutes, I can make it gospel for them.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's so good. That's so awesome. I I say I'm gonna steal. I'm not gonna steal it, but I'm gonna use that, the king, kingdom, kingdom entry, kingdom life. That's so good. That's what it's all about right there.
That has changed. That has changed everything for me in my connecting with people. That has been the game changer of my life in that area.
Introduce them to the king, get in the kingdom. That's so good.
You know what's interesting too, when you say that, like when you say how do things like that change? You know, I think those kinds of things help people to sort of summarize and simplify. I was joking when we came on. I was joking, and I told Chris, I said, look, man, I said, this is my effort and efficiency. There wasn't any ice in the ice maker, and so I took blueberries. They were frozen blueberries, and I put them in my bottle, and that became my ice. And then also they came to be nutrition and water. So, but the thing about it is I think that efficiency, to be able to simplify things down to some place where people can literally be able to say, you know, I can actually use that as a lens. I do some competition pistol shooting and stuff like that. And I was checking out a new, it's like a reflex red dot sight. And it's interesting because if you learn how to use it, what happens is you don't look at the sight. You actually look past the sight to the field of vision beyond it. And the reticle appears out into the field of vision. And to me, a lot of what you've said today, even that, king, first it's the king and then it's his kingdom and then kingdom entry and kingdom life, to me is almost like that. It's almost like a reticle. It's like, it's the view that everything beyond it, that's projected out onto. And right. It's amazing.
Well, when we think about it, the church had a birthday. It will have an exit date. Psalms 145:13 says the kingdom is everlasting. I mean, the kingdom is forever.
Yeah.
Then when you start, and I'm not minimizing the church, it's the object of his affection. He bought it purchased it with his blood. What is it? The bride. The bride of who? Oh, the king. When the king came back, I mean, whenever he was resurrected, he spent 40 days with those disciples. I wish somebody would have had a GoPro on their head, so we would have had that. But what was he teaching for 40 days? The kingdom. What did they go back and receive? The king's power. What gospel? Why is the apostles' doctrine the doctrine? Because it was the doctrine of the king.
Yeah.
And so when we elevate to the king and get all the humans out of the king zone and zero in on the kingdom, it's a different day.
It's amazing.
It's a sad day when Jesus says, hey, Ken, you're sitting in my seat.
Yeah.
Which unfortunately happens a lot, and it's, not you, Ken. I'm just saying, like, for
Thank
us.
you. Thank you, bro.
We see that a lot.
Thank you very much.
I've been meaning to talk to you about that. Just kidding. Just kidding. Sorry, man. That's not what I meant. Well, this has been so good, and
Rich.
We actually somebody texted us and said, "Can we do this for a couple of hours? Just keep it rolling." I think we just keep the conversation going. So much good stuff, so rich. I hate the fact that there's a nationwide Facebook outage right now. So we got booted off of Facebook. I was noticing the numbers. I'm like, what in the world's going on? So there's a Facebook issue. So we will make sure that we push and promote this like crazy, because man, this is such a great conversation, Ken. This is needful, so needful for the kingdom. Real quick, Brother Shock, share with us again, if people want to get connected with you, how can they do that? What's that look like?
Okay. Thank you for asking that question. I appreciate it. On, of course, kqministries.net is our website, kqministries.net. On Instagram, it's Terry M. Shock and Melanie. Then she has her own Melanie Shock, Melani. There is no E on her name, Melanie Shock. and then nonfiction.women. Nonfiction.women. Then on X, I'm just Terry Shock. And on Facebook, nonfiction.women and KQ Ministries. That would be the way that you could connect with us.
You know, Terry, I just want to take a moment and personally thank you because you've spent a lot of time helping my son and my daughter-in-law, and you live what you have talked about on the podcast today. And you're a man of great integrity, and I deeply appreciate the investment that you've made. I didn't ask you to do that. You made it. Was one of those deals of, you know, looking past. Um, uh, Kyle had a little bit of his dad's DNA in him, and you look past a little of that type A, and realized that, and made an investment and continue to make an investment in his life. And they've both been to nonfiction. Well, I mean, it's for women, but he's come with her to be blessed by the sidebar conversations that he brags about. I've heard the stories about you and your wife in your city and the people that you've connected with, and those stories of living on mission and kingdom. And those are, that's like a Twitter or the X account. You have a check mark by your name and statements when you say that this is the way you live. I know it to be true because it has been reported by those who know you privately. And so just want to say how much I love and appreciate you, and thank you so much for being on today.
Well, I definitely appreciate it, and I am very connected with Kyle and Callie, and very excited about how God's leading them and what all's happening in their life, and glad to be connected with you guys. This has been a great privilege, and I wish you the best. Thank you for the way you're going about this and giving yourself to equipping other leaders.
Awesome. Thank you very much. We appreciate that. Appreciate everybody that joined us today that migrated over to YouTube to catch it. And we'll be sure and get this out and get this promoted to everybody. So appreciate being a part of the conversation. We look forward to coming back to you next Tuesday around 10 o'clock. Until then, go live mobilized.